the fastest growing and largest Agritech startup in the country. He is also the interim chapter president of the Philippine Association of Agriculturists National Capital Region, which is the one and only accredited integrated professional organization of agriculture professionals. His passions include agricultural development through digital transformation and also securing food through urban agriculture. He is well adept in the use of agricultural drones and digital farm management systems, as well as in using satellite imagery and GIS in agriculture. Let us all welcome Mr. Earwin Belen, ICT4Ag NextGen Ambassador.
All right, so I won't be using the podium. I hope you won't mind. I'll just walk around the stage. I mean, just to release the nervousness. Okay. So good afternoon. All right. Do we still have energy? Great. Okay, so I'll be discussing about agri-innovation. What else and what's next? Um, Actually, these questions, what else, what's next? It's not an original from me. Well, obviously I copied it from somebody. But later on, we'll realize we have to answer these questions. So, um, as mentioned earlier by the hosts, so I am a licensed agriculturist. I am the head of Agri-Innovations at Kita Agritech. So just to give you a background of what I am doing. So Kita Agritech, it's a B2B platform uh, so basically we are doing vegetables. We sell vegetables to our hotel clients, restaurants, and now we're trying to close the loop. So we're trying to create the value chain for vegetables. And I also graduated my master's at the Asian Institute of Management. So I took up innovation and business. And yeah, so I'm currently the NextGen ambassador for ICT4Ag. Okay, so just to synthesize what has happened for today, let me just borrow this framework from the Bridging Leadership Framework of the Asian Institute of Management. So when we say about bridging leadership, it's always ownership, co-ownership, and then co-creation. Now, when we talk about ownership, we look inside. So we do introspection. So I want to format my presentation on this framework. First, I want also to share with you my experiences in agriculture, in digital agriculture. And so co-ownership, discussing the conversations that we had earlier. And co-creation. So what are the ways moving forward with ICT4Ag? Okay. So let me just share with you some bit of a story. And for me, it's full circle for me that I started my agriculture journey in UP Los Baños. I took up BS Agriculture. And now I'm speaking here and discussing what I have done for the past years with my career. So first, I was a remote sensing technologist, and I also do GIS. So earlier, we saw a lot of discussions about doing remote sensing, satellite imagery. These tools are available way, way back. And we have been doing this. And I also had experience in doing agricultural extension. So before we deal with farmers, especially these are urban farmers actually, that they have phones, they have access to technology, and yet they are still learning. So there are a lot of ways that we can implement this kind of change, especially if the farmers or the end users are knowledgeable in using these kinds of technologies. I also did some policies and advocacies before. So I am part of YPARD Philippines. I am also, as mentioned, I am part also of the Philippine Association of Agriculturists and a whole lot of other organizations. So uh, having this audience doing ICT, for me, it's kind of an advocacy as well to on how we can promote digital agriculture. And as mentioned, I have been doing urban agriculture as well. I think one of the sessions earlier is on indoor farming, right? Nobody's answering. Anyway, so one of the earlier topics, urban agriculture, indoor farming. So I also had some experiences on that. And lastly, as a digital agriculturist, so before, I used to have my own startup where we implement all these kinds of technologies. I also used to work with one of the largest agri machineries company in the Philippines, where we promoted the use of drones. So it really came to a full circle for me, standing here and discussing these topics with you. So, how do we now answer this question? What else? Okay, so let me just run down what we have discussed earlier. Okay, so earlier we have listened to Yusek Morales discussing what are the initiatives of the Department of Agriculture with the DFP, the initiatives of PhilRice as well, and then also from Dorado discussing Project Saray, and the long-term goals, partnering with the OST, and their partnership with LGUs. I think one of the questions, it's a good question actually, how do we deal with the local government? And also we have the panel discussion. So we saw earlier, it's complete because there's the academe, the industry, private companies, the government, and also the farmers as well. So for me, it's important to have these kinds of conversations because if we're not talking, nothing will happen, right? Okay, what else? So throughout the sessions, we saw the pain points. So earlier I was in what Hall A, breakout room A. So actually, Pele Anonas is my boss. So Pele discussed about the pain points, about the pain points of the farmers on how high prices and also how these farmers cannot afford this farm implements. And then also Juco Laxina is a good friend. She discussed about the scams. So we also have success stories. I mean, something to highlight. Um, it was fun listening on the insights coming from the academe, from the learning sites for agriculture, and also the farmers themselves on their experience. Because what we want with ICT is we want the farmers to use the technology. And seeing these stories, as mentioned earlier, seeing these are real stories. And all the other discussions, we have all of these tools. So I hope you have checked D4Ag PH. I checked the website. It has a lot of tools. So if you haven't checked their website, please do. And there are a lot of tools actually that you can use. Now, having these discussions, we have to answer what's next. So our work is just starting. And now, how do we go from here? first we have to, for me, we have to craft localized frameworks and the working standards for ICT in agriculture in the Philippines. Why? I noticed, or probably others as well, we have all our different efforts, but the end goal is the same, right? We want to help the farmers to become more productive. We want the farmers to have less costs so that they can earn more. But we're doing it separately. What I would suggest is to have that policy change to facilitate that ICT adoption. And then at the same time, we need to talk. Government sector, the private sector, and especially the farmers. Earlier, it was when I was talking to some of the attendees. Well, it's good that we have farmer representatives, but haven't you noticed? A lot of us are coming from the academe, from research, but where are the farmers, right? So we need more people, we need more farmers to attend these kinds of events. And we need to build, with that, we need to build and sustain that interest and knowledge with these stakeholders. So capacity building for the farmers, yes, we have DFP, but how about the agricultural extension workers? Are they capacitated to do digital agriculture? Can they fly a drone? Well, I can. But I mean, all of these tools, it really takes some time for them to learn. So we really need to capacitate everybody, not just the farmers, even the professionals, and perhaps even those who are not into farming, to engage them to become farmers, to become stakeholders in farming. We need to educate them, we need to train them. And again, my question is, can we have more farmers in the next iteration of ICT4Ag? Lastly, what I would want to have is to create those alliances, create those networks, those partnerships. Why? Because, as I mentioned to some earlier, maybe I am good with something, but on other things, I'm not good. So probably another partner will have, that's the strength of the other partner. So why don't I partner with that person, right? So we need all those collaborations. We need all those partnerships to make things happen. And similar on how Australia did for their country. I mean, with the stakeholders of Australia, they already have the Australian Agritech. So they build an organization that mostly are startups, but then why don't we create a big tent of these kinds of organizations, these stakeholders, to do the dialogues, to do the talks, so that when we face, let's say, the policy makers, okay, we are an industry, we want to pursue digital agriculture. So if we can have that one voice, so it will be easier for us also to effect that change that we want. Okay, so wrapping up, I just like to share these words coming from Hitendra Patel. Hitendra, actually we call him HP, is the chairman or managing director rather of IXL Center. So it's an innovation center based in Boston. And he said in an interview, whatever you are doing today, you decide to ask the question, what else, what's next? Because in innovation, it's either you innovate or not, or it's either you disrupt or be disrupted. So if you do that, then you'll come up with these ideas that you will need to do to be able to adopt. to the changing future. And lastly, actually what I want to highlight is carpe diem. Seize the day. We have to do it now. All right. So with that, I hope I was able to provide justice with the event. I was able to inspire everybody on pursuing digitalization and the development of Philippine agriculture and for the rest of the world as well. So with that, thank you very much. So you can connect with me through LinkedIn and through Twitter. So you can scan the QR code if you want to connect with me in LinkedIn. So again, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that very insightful plenary talk, Mr. Erwin Belen. It is a very exciting path for digital agriculture, very exciting times ahead of us, but it is also not an easy journey for this to bloom beautifully because we will be needing all hands on board, of course, and all of us here today has a part to play to be able to adapt to the changing future, right? So before we proceed, we would like to open the floor for a few questions. We could entertain them if you have questions for Mr. Erwin, even to our online participants, if you guys have questions before we proceed.
Anyone?
Or
Further
comments,
questions?
not necessarily questions, even comments. Right.
Recommendations?
Going
Anyone?
once, going twice. Okay, I think Mr. Benedict has.
Okay, yeah. So thank you, Erwin, and thank you everyone for those who contributed in that presentation because what we asked Erwin is to really include all what we have discussed in the whole day. But one of the things that you mentioned very importantly is that we have to include more, especially more farmers, more players, more actors. So I think, I'm not sure if this is a question for Erwin or a question for everyone. uh, what do you think should be like the next urgent thing that we'll have to do? Because there are also some floating ideas earlier, like let's do this again. For ICTforAg, probably it's going to be next year. But there are some works for the rest of the year, not this type of conference, but other things related to this. But I think my question is really, what do we do next, especially for the Philippine setting? And given that our theme, especially for this year's localizing impact. No? So when we say localizing impact, we really focus on not the technology, but what it's doing in the local setting, in the local context. We're talking about specific locations, probably in different parts of the country. So how should be more forward for the Philippines? No, what's the next thing that you think should be done together by this group or probably other players as well, those who are not yet part of these discussions? There are mentions earlier like financial institutions, other organizations, probably more farmer organizations, more farmer representatives. So yeah, so that's just, I'm interested to hear some thoughts around it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe just to respond with Benny on those insights. I agree. For the next iteration, we really need this other partners, not just the farmers. I mean, I focus on the farmers because they are the end users, right? But yes, there are these financial institutions who are part of the value chain and probably also the institutional buyers. So if we can create that ecosystem, that we can do those dialogues. We can talk about how to develop agriculture as a whole using ICT. So I do agree on that. And yeah, probably on the next year. And I think ICT for Ag is an annual event. So yes.
Thank you, sir. We have one more point from Sir Charlie.
Thank you so much, sir, for synthesizing what we have discussed for today. You have mentioned about the collaboration of all the institutions in going forward for digitalization. One of the things that I found out in our government institutions that we have this kind of, I don't know if it's a race for them to develop their own technology or their own digital platform. But because sometimes the farmer are sometimes irritated on these things. See, for example, the DA would come to the farmers, geotagging their lands for our BSA. Then here comes what they call this, the insurance company, the PCIC also comes to, why not make it one? Why not make it, because we are just doing this for the Filipino farmers. Why not collaborate on one another, sharing your data, because they say it's Data Privacy Act, Data Privacy Act. So we are working as one government for the betterment of the Filipino farmer. So as you mentioned, what's the future? I hope it would be included in the future digitalization of our agriculture in the Philippines. That the farmers, because even us, the associations, uh, when the farmer presented to us their area, that this is the area based on the RSBSA, then comes the PCIC with their own data gathered from geotagging. It's different. So the farmer will get confused. Which one should I follow? So I thank you for opening that and hoping that this will be included on the future of our digitalization.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe just to respond quickly.
All right.
All right, sir, thank you very much for that manifestation. And also just to share with you, and probably I see Jen from Agridome. She knows this problem with all these agencies. And me as well, we experienced this with all of these agencies doing drones for agriculture. So the problem is they are not talking to each other, right? So I'm just putting it on the table. Let's talk. Because what we want is to help the farmers ultimately. So let's put down all those pride, all those kingdoms. I mentioned earlier, I call it kingdoms because it's the kingdom of this and kingdom of that. But if we put down all these walls and talk, we can do something and make change. Right?
Okay, I think we have one more response, or would you like to respond to
No,
that?
no, I'm not the one going to respond,
Sir
but somebody from
Glenn?
the government.
Okay, so I think some people are guilty. Sir Glenn, just kidding.
Noted. Okay. Ha. Saan ba ako? Okay. I just come up here. Thank you for putting me on the spot. Yes, I think or breaking the silos is actually it's not as easy as it is. Yeah. Because we have mandates, but the beauty with digitalization, it's easy to come together, integrate. Easy in a sense that the information is there, but data share you just have to execute some paperwork and all of that. But yes, maybe what's next is as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't end here. I mean, this is just the start of a series of talks, I believe. Yeah. Then we can have more time with farmers, what in getting their perceptions and turning into our perspectives, and process it eventually and come up with a digital agriculture roadmap for the Philippines. That's one. That's one. I believe that's something tangible that we could do all together. Uh, you know your and the good thing with it's going to be industry wide. So it's not just government. It's not just government. So you have your fair share of the technology developers are there. There's startups. So we could uh, there are many thoughts that's trying to with what Chuka said, especially with the scams. So on how we eventually prepare our farmers to trust these digital platforms, on how we change their behavior towards it, on how we build confidence and earning their trust. Yeah, I think that's the crucial element before we do or we reach the point that we transform really the sector. So um, many of us here are technocrats, I believe, and the way another way forward that we see is when we do research is not a researcher oriented anymore. It's really how do we make it everything. I will repeat it again, participatory, in such a way that we can contribute and all small or regardless of your size. uh, I'm not speaking of your but whether you're a student or a youth or simple farmer or a, a wealthy technocrat or a big company or whatever, we should just agree on what needs to be done for the sector. So maybe what I can tell Benny about it is, and we can sit together, especially with ATI, and replicate this one, but do it with more, identify more stakeholders that we can process everything, and then as a input to a bigger plan, ultimately bigger plan. We're just handing rice, but what we're targeting to do is to do the digital agriculture for the whole industry, for the whole Philippines. So I think the message is already there. and and I believe as I watch the presentation of Earwin, oh, those are my assignments. Those are the ways forward. So anyway, I think there's much work to do, and again, we have made some strides. Yes, we have to build on it more. Just be persistent enough, just like what you guys are doing. And it's a crisis every day that they have to whenever they do transaction, they have to prove their legitimacy as a not a scammer. So so starting from the bad experience of farmers could be a good challenge, a good challenge for those who are coming in and for those who are already there, and just to be persistent enough, and for those who are challenged by regulations. Don't worry. I believe Yusek Morales and the secretary is on a developmental stance. So, so we will address some over-regulations, but again, we will ensure that there's compliance. But we will be on a developmental stance. So that's, for now, that's one thing that we could, promise this group. And of course, I believe we still have to talk with the ICT. And hopefully they will agree that they will do the unified cloud for everyone. So whoever, maybe that's in the future. For those who want to engage in the Philippines, or whether you're private or government, it's a common cloud for everyone. So that the open data that was mentioned earlier, that's a preparation for that. So, so I think those are my assignments. Thank you for
Thank you, Director.
for this event.
Okay, thank you, Sir Glenn. I think we have one last question from the back, right? So this will be our last question for you, sir. You can stay here at the stage.
Uh, Good afternoon. I'm Ernesto Chavez from Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation, or PCIC po. I would just like to yes, sir. Welcome to kapamilya na tayo ulit, sir. Actually, I just want to react to Sir for our farmer representative. Actually, we have already an initiative collaboration with the Department of Agriculture. Actually, by next week, we will be having our meeting kasi we are now into GIS, georeferencing. So there's already initial that all the georeference files from the DA, the phase 2 of the RSBSA, will be shared to PCIC. So there will be no more repetition of the georeference area. But the concern of PCIC is that we have different product lines. So in georeferencing phase 2 of the RSBSA, most of the time, we've encountered that they're conducting georeferencing the whole area, but PCIC is more specific to a certain crop. So if you're insuring rice, so we will just georeference the rice area. So that's why I think, sir, from North Cotabato, kababayan from Mindanao, I'm from Cagayan de Oro kasi, we're doing georeferencing for the rice, no? And then it's very helpful for us, no? I have connection also with Sir Benny, no, with the RCMAS. So we already downloaded some of the georeference files. So we will integrate everything. So the final will be by next week. So I will be attending with Sir. I think si Sir andun sa meeting namin with the ICT po. Kasi balik kapamilya na kami from DOF to DA. So that's all, sir. That's why I just want to give some clarification why PCIC is conducting also the georeferencing. It's because PCIC is very specific for a certain crop. So if you're insuring rice, we will just georeference your rice, not the whole area. Kasi we are insuring the rice. For corn, we will georeference the corn only, not the whole area, excluding your house or your fish pond, because fish pond is different. So we will also georeference the fish pond. So that's the forward for PCIC. Thank you.
All right.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Maybe just a manifestation. Look, I mean, I just say that we have to talk. Okay, we're talking, right? I mean, if we have these kinds of conversations, eventually we'll have something. I mean, sa Tagalog, may matatalisod din tayo pag nag-uusap tayo. So again, thank you very much, sir, for that clarification. And I hope more agencies, stakeholders, private sectors, mag-usap lang tayo. Let's talk. So again, thank you very much.
Okay, once again, thank you very much for everyone who asked their questions. And of course, our plenary speaker, Mr. Earwin Belen. And the synthesis of our event and the outlined next steps are truly inspiring and set a solid path for the future of Agritech in the Philippines.
The discussions and insights shared today highlight the importance of continued innovation and collaboration in our agricultural sectors. Once again, thank you, Mr. Earwin, for those encouraging words and for your vision on the future of digital agriculture. Thank you as well for all of your insights, your questions, and recommendations. So to officially close our event, we are privileged to hear from Dr. Ajay Colley, Deputy Director General for Research at IRI. Sir?
Right. I have never really understood what closing remarks are all about. I think Earwin, whatever did was kind of a closing anyway. So I'm not sure what needs to be said to close it down. I think it's generally a thank you. And I want to start by thanking all of you, especially because this is one of those gatherings where UPLB, IRI, and ATI have come together. And that's a start to what has been said, bring more stakeholders together. One example that comes to mind very quickly, it's a very different example, not necessarily related to ICT, but how one can enrich a conference or a meeting or a gathering. So this was in Singapore, in an expensive hotel. Two conferences were going on together. And one was about plant roots. Until about 12, 15 years back, there was very little known about plant roots, because obviously they're underground, and when you bring them out, if you look at the molecular aspects of genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, etc., transcriptomics, things have changed. By the time you're ready to make that into a sample for analysis, things have changed. Things have also changed because you don't know how laterally they are spread, how deep they are. So there are all kinds of mechanisms to figure that out. But it wasn't going very quickly. Because in one case, at least in Japan, we noticed that they actually sliced the piece of land in such a way that they could see the roots. They could then see how deep they are going and how laterally they are spread out. So it was a difficult task working with plant roots. But there was another conference going on, a medical conference going on in another part of the hotel. And one of the doctors forgot his way and entered the root conference. And obviously, the person who was giving the lecture said, "Oh, roots are so difficult to work with. We don't understand them, and it's so difficult." And so he just suddenly realized that he's in the wrong place. But when he heard what he heard, he just stopped over there, and he said, "Excuse me, I'm in the wrong conference. I have to leave, but I cannot leave without telling you what I think from what I have heard." And he said, "Have you guys ever heard of CT scan?" So instead of using CT scan, horizontally, why can't you use a CT scan vertically? And that changed the entire field of root biology. And now root biology is one of the biggest fields in plant biology, actually, because now you can have a CT scan which looks at your pot and tells you exactly how deep the root is, what are the lateral spread of it. And so it just goes as an example to show that maybe inviting not just the technocrats. By the way, it's great to see people in black suits and everything over here. We at ERI we don't get that much, such well-dressed people. And so instead of just having the core people who you think can make a difference and going perhaps all the way to the farmers, why can't we have a mix of people? Because you never know where a new idea comes from. Engineers, biologists, social scientists. Social science is a big thing, because let's not forget, we are talking of adoption over here. You can continue doing whatever you do with the technology, but if it is not adopted, it's not going to go very far. So social sciences is extremely important. Behavioral economists are very important. And so I think we need to have those kind of people. We need to have, I'm sure you could find people who are involved in that in terms of socioeconomics, etc. Engineers who are involved in that. The other thing I wanted to say is that whenever I'm called in to say a few words, it's just that kind of position you hold. You either give a welcome remarks or a closing remarks. I'm a scientist. I'm trained as a scientist. I was a scientist till about 5-6 years back. So I don't like going into a meeting and just blah blah blah. Yeah, I like to attend a couple of sessions, and so I can understand what the matter is and be able to talk something relevant. And I did have that plan to come in the afternoon, but unfortunately I could not do that. So I'm sorry that I won't be able to make a lot of sense about this conference today, but I think within 1 hour or half an hour or so, I get the drift of what is going on. And I want to quickly just say a few things. I've noted a few points down, which are relevant from what IRI is doing, from the perspective of what IRI is doing. And one way of bringing different people together is to really set a common goal. We have done that at IRI. We used to have people working on what we now call direct seeded rice. And so there were agronomists who were working on direct seeded rice. There were breeders who wanted to breed varieties that are suitable for direct seeded rice. There were social scientists who were trying to figure out whether the farmers will adopt direct seeded rice plantation or not. So essentially, there were different people doing these things, and they didn't even know that a breeder is actually trying to breed for direct seeded rice. Breeders did not know to what extent the agronomists are working on direct seeded rice. And neither of them knew what the social scientists are trying to do. And we brought them together under what we then called a direct seeded rice flagship. And we set a common target, which is that in 4 to 5 years, we should have varieties that have been bred for suitability to direct seeded rice conditions. And with those varieties, we should have agronomic packages to go with it. And we should have some data very clearly on where this is suitable. And that's where things like ICT come in, which is, all your remote sensing and GIS, etc., came into play to figure out exactly what are the kind of areas and locations. I mean, if there is enough water, why would you want to do direct seeded rice? But that is only one reason why you would want to do direct seeded rice. If you do not use a lot of water, you reduce on methane emissions. So even if you have enough water, as long as it is not rain fed, you could reduce the water usage, because it's not only water saving, and it's not only labor saving in terms of not doing your transplantations, it's also greenhouse gas emission reductions, right? So what are the areas where this could be suitable? So that's where GIS came into being. And so if we set that common target that 5 years down the line, we need to have varieties, we need to have agronomic packages, we need to know where to do this, with whom to do this. We need to be able to go and convince the governments to change their policies towards direct seeded rice. So all of this comes together, and we can go out and make this happen. And believe me, things became so quick and so fast that actually in 3 years or 3.5 years since we established that flagship, we are very close to releasing new varieties which are suitable for direct seeded rice. We already have data from Cambodia, Vietnam, India on how direct seeded rice is better for the farmers, better for the environment, better for the women, for example. And so all of that came into being because we brought all these people together. So if we set a common goal for all the different stakeholders who are involved in delivering something, I think that's one way of really bringing people together. But I want to go a step before all this happens. And one of the things that we have noticed is that, agriculture is something students hear of only when they have finished high school. And even then, many of them do not. So you hear of botany, you hear of plant biology, you hear of, different names of plants you have to remember if you have to do something with botany. But we don't really talk about agriculture. And I think what we need to do is somehow include agriculture to some extent in the high school curriculum. And now agriculture is, fancy, it's sexy. You have drones, you have remote sensing, you have all the engineering aspects. It's not, just your bullock cart or just your carabao and plowing the field and waiting to see where you get your next meal from. Okay, agriculture is changing in a very, very big way, and 10, 12 years down the line, agriculture is going to be a very, very different area to be involved with. People are investing a lot. A lot of technology is coming into agriculture. And so that technology would surely attract the youth. So anybody, who can be exposed to how modern agriculture can be done, that exposure, the sooner it comes, the better. So if we include it in high school curriculum and start telling them about what agriculture really means and where it is going, I'm sure we'll be able to attract a number of young people back into agriculture. Because, whatever changes, AI might change everything, but it's not going to change the fact that we still need food. We will produce that food differently, we will process that food differently, we will distribute that food differently, but we will still need food. So food is something to be involved with, right? And if you want to be involved with food, agriculture is the area to be in. And now there are enough opportunities for making agriculture a source of living, not a kind of a subsistence kind of a thing, but really getting into a business with that. And starting that may not be easy. Obviously, we still have a number of smallhold farmers, very poor farmers. But something that has worked for IRI in one of the states in India, in Assam, northeastern state, is building up groups of farmers, finding a couple of farmers who are relatively well off, and then coming up with business models of lending and renting out machines and ICT tools, apps, etc., and really supporting the group of those farmers. What that does is that's a very small thing. You can reach a few thousand, but we want to reach millions. But the trick is, if you demonstrate that to a few thousand, then things work by word of mouth, actually. And especially when it comes to farmers, it goes very quickly about what works and what does not work. And so that has helped us immensely. In Assam, we have a group of about 8,000 farmers who had a few number of rich, large scale farmers there who were happy with the model of them being able to supply machinery, supply drones, supply apps, and help the other farmers with the apps. And of course, IRI staff was there to help. And within a very short time, we were able to convince all of those farmers about the value of ICT tools, of apps, of mechanized DSR. So let's not forget, going back to DSR, that DSR is nothing new. Transplantation is actually something new. Transplantation is probably 100 years old, or probably even less. DSR is the old way of doing things, right? But we don't get enough from DSR simply because it's not very efficient. So we now have protocols to make it efficient. We have ICT tools to make it efficient. And so we are now getting into mechanized DSR, which is doing extremely well, even with transplanted rice varieties. And the reason I say that is that transplanted rice varieties do not do very well in DSR. All the experiments that were being done for DSR and results coming out to say, let's not do DSR because the yield goes down, it was actually because these varieties are bred for transplantation, right? But the advantage of DSR varieties is that if you breed for DSR, you can go back to transplantation and you'll still get the same yield. Okay, so those are the kind of advantages they are now seeing. And so bringing it all together, it seems like, not only rice, but all of agriculture, as we are talking over here today, is going to be a very different area to be engaged in. And the sooner we can catch them young and convince them and inspire them to be taking up agriculture in a very different way, the better it would be for all of us. So I want to thank you all once again to take this some of these discussions and some of these concepts ahead. I look forward to this meeting as an annual event and bring more stakeholders, bring more farmers in, By the way, in defense of PICC, let me just not fail to mention that we just recently signed a MOU with them, and they are now getting into what is called the area-based yield index for insurance, and that will not necessarily ask every single farmer how much you had and how much you lost, but based on legacy and historical data, they will be able to see that in this 10 hectares area, this was the average yield, and they will compensate the farmers based on that historical data of average yield. So things are improving. The only thing is technology goes extremely fast. And if we don't keep pace with it, we will very soon realize that we don't have enough people who can actually take those things ahead. And it will just remain an academic exercise. So let's make sure that we take our technology through demonstrations and through convincing demonstrations to the people who really, really need it. So I'll stop here. And once again, thank you very much for this meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ajay. We'd like to request you to please stay on the stage, as we would like to award the certificate of appreciation. Let me read the citation. Certificate of appreciation is presented to Mr. Earwin Belen as a speaker in the plenary session, Agri-Innovation, What's Next, What Else? Given this day, May 29, 2024 at Erie Headquarters, Los Baños, Laguna, signed by Benedict Hardinero, ICTforAg City Lead, and Janelle Joseph Dev Global. Let's give them a warm round of applause. Okay, thank you very much once again, Mr. Earwin Belen and Dr. Ajay, for your inspiring words and sharing your valuable perspective on the future of Agritech and agriculture in general.
Right. And with that, we conclude the ICT4Ag 2024 Philippines event. Thank you, everyone, for your participation and your contributions. Let's continue to work together to create an impactful, inclusive, and sustainable ICT solutions for agriculture. This has been Marian Antonio.
And this has been Johan Mendoza, and we hope to see you all again next year, probably in another place. And have a great evening and safe travels. And we